let me know.
G'day legends, g'day superstars. Hola from Peps and Jdog. It's a round 2 review, a massive round of football, one that will be forgotten by many teams and one that will be celebrated across the board. Can't wait to talk to you about it. So much to talk about, so much to get through. I'm Peps, the 377-game superstar of the East Keilor Football Club. You know the co-host with the most. He is the great man, Jamie the Jdog Wallace. We're here to chat about the number one sport in a country known as Australia. Screw you, NRL. It is all about Aussie rules. And we're lace out because it's how you want your football. Great man, how are you? Exciting round of football. So much to talk about. Little stories everywhere. We're going to get balls deep into this one because my club had a shocker. Your club had a win. But there's so many clubs, I think, at this stage, you could almost say that they're one loss away from their season virtually being over.
Love it. Peps.
Yes.
I got a challenge for us this week.
Yes.
If we can get through this faster than 40 minutes,
Yep.
I will give you $3.
Fantastic. All right. Let us get stuck into it. Rightio. First and foremost, Jdog, let's get into this ladder because we need to have a look at this because things are starting to settle down. And I've got a very bold prediction I'm willing to run with once we go through it. Hawthorn, outright first. Hockball is number one, 129.9%, 12 points. Then we've got 4 teams sitting on 8 points. The Radelaide Crows, what a percentage, 172.1. GWS, 143.7. Collingwood, 120. And the Brisbane Lions, who came back from almost the loss of the year so far, outside of Richmond being Carlton, which really doesn't seem like a big thing now, 114.6. Then the Gold Coast Suns, just underneath that. They've only played one game in 3 rounds so far. They've got a percentage of 277.6. When was the last time you saw a percentage of 277.6, J-Dog?
It would be a very long time.
Exactly. And then Geelong, not the Melbourne, get their first win of the season over the D's. Western Bulldogs, Sydney Swans, Port Adelaide, St Kilda and Richmond round out the teams with victories. Then you got Carlton, my mob, Essendon, Fremantle and the Wet Toast Eagles rounding out the final 18th spot on the ladder. Now, big fella, I'm going to make a very bold prediction. And I think with only 3 rounds, because I'm just going 3 rounds, it's so much easier than going round 0 plus 2. I'm saying there's only 5 teams that can win the flag.
Yep. Names?
Hawthorn, Adelaide, GWS, Brisbane, Geelong. Everybody start planning for 2026.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Why? What have you seen, Peps, that makes you believe that?
I just look at what's happened on the weekend, and even though Geelong did have a loss, I'm not too phased with it. Like they've won, I think they've lost 7 out of 8 against St Kilda at Marvel. St Kilda played out of their skins. Geelong, it was the loss that they had to have, as they would normally say. I'm not too worried about that because all Geelong want to do is get into finals and then they can roll on. They got another 10 or so games down there at GMHBA Stadium. They'll probably win 9 of those. They'll need a couple more to finish in the top 4, and they'll probably do that easy. Okay. Hawthorn, they're already getting their beautiful run. They've got a really deep list. They're really, really set up well. They work so nicely through the middle. Barras and Battle have been instrumental with how they've come into the team, and everything forward of the ball is just working nicely, so I can't see them going backwards. Adelaide, they were okay. You wanted to see them get their kick. They've had their kick. They've got a cracking forward line. They've got options left, right, and centre. They've got people who are struggling a little bit last year, like Rochelle, who's had a really nice start to the season when it was a little bit the opposite in 2024. Rankin's playing great football. They're not relying on Dawson. They're not relying on Crouch. They're not relying on Laird to go through the middle. They've had Peatling coming and Alex Neil-Bullen come into that group, and they're just humming. So they've actually got better than last year, and I like the way that they're setting things up. GWS are GWS. We just expect them to be better. Even though they had that close win against the D's, they still had a couple out. Stringer wasn't there. Hogan wasn't there. They're just going to be hard to beat up there in New South Wales. And the Brisbane Lions, I know that they were a little bit teased on the weekend by Wet Toast. Brisbane are Brisbane. They're very, very similar. Lots of depth. Their midfield works beautifully. Their back line, very, very reliable. And that forward mix that they've got where they don't rely on, Joe Danaher's not there this year. They don't rely on Eric Hipwood. They have a nice spread, which is going to lead into a bit of a segment that I'm going to roll through. And I've got a bit of a controversial opinion. I'd like to hear your opinion on it as well. I just think that they are set up nicely as well. I can't see Collingwood winning it simply because there's been a couple of, the first week was a bit of a fluffer. Last week, they were really, really good. This week, did what they had to do. But I just think as the season gets on, the weeks get longer, the games get colder, I can start to see 1 or 2 or 3 of their senior players get injured. And we know, I reckon there's a bit of a snowball effect there. I don't see much outside of who's playing at the moment. Gold Coast, they're just too unreliable. North Melbourne, I know they're in there at the moment. They're not ready yet. Western Bulldogs, just got too many injuries. They've got to make it before they can do anything, and I just don't think that they're a danger. And Sydney, I just don't trust them. And everybody else after that we can forget about.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking right there at the moment.
Big call.
So there's only 5 teams that can win the flag, I'm saying, after round 2, aka 3. We'll come back in many, many weeks. I'd love to hear what the listeners out there think. I'd love to hear what the viewers think about. Have I got this right? Have I got this wrong? But I honestly believe there's only 5 teams, which was at Hawthorn, Adelaide, GWS, Brisbane, and Geelong. They're the only teams that can win the flag in 2025. Jdog, we have lots of things, which is awesome. Yank on the footies here as well too. Lots of things coming through. I don't know whether Pie's score enough to stay in the 8. Yep, I agree. A yank on the footy is pumping stuff out. Not sure about Bailey Smith's calf. Pretty sure he has a consultant in his contract allowing him to get his abs shorn once per week. Totally understand that as well too. Good to see Craigie Wessels all the way from the USA joining us as well, which is awesome. But the rising star, I wanted to get the rising star out of the way for us as well too, because he is from Geelong, Craigie Wessels' favourite club over there. And this week it is Connor O'Sullivan from the Geelong. He had a cracking performance against St Kilda and had seen him land a Telstra AFL Rising Star nomination for round 2. Pick 11 in the 2023 draft. Impressed in their 7-point loss. Had 15 disposals, 7 marks, and 9 intercept possessions in their defeat. So good on you, young fella. I reckon you've got a big career headed towards you. And that's the sort of stuff that we like to see early on when it comes to footy, Jdog. Right, my friend. Thoughts, games on the weekend. Let's do a quick little whip around from the games Thursday night last week. Hawthorn versus Essendon. Hawthorn versus Essendon. Hawthorn versus Carlton. Mm-hmm. That's right. Thoughts and feelings about that one?
Cracking game. Carlton looked 1,000,000% better than what they were looking the week before, up until 3/4 time. Hawthorn got rolling. The Wizard, Sicily, all those players. The usual crew, Sicily. Did I say Sicily twice then?
Yep, he was twice as good.
Probably, yeah.
Yep.
But they just got rolling. But a good Thursday night game, a solid Thursday night game for me.
Yeah, it was up and down, wasn't it? It was really good in the way that Carlton started off pretty slowly, got in front at half time, but then didn't really do much, didn't score a goal in the last quarter. Hawthorn ran away with it as well too. If it wasn't for they were really having the bad kicking boots on the weekend. They could have taken that away too, but I just think that the Hawks, I don't see, at the moment, I just can't see a weakness. They open the ground out. They widen the ground out. They're not afraid to switch. They're not afraid to go direct. They're not afraid to go at the 45. Their fundamentals when it comes to their kicking and their ball use is first class. And if you just keep it simple, it's amazing what you can do with the game. And Sam Mitchell is doing that week after week, and I'm absolutely loving what they're bringing to the party too. So, Carlton can maybe hold their head a little bit high, but they would have been hoping for a better run of it at the start of 2025. Doggies versus Collingwood. I must admit, I did go to bed at 3/4 time of this game. I was just absolutely buggered. Saw the result, and funny enough, there were a couple of dodgy decisions to sort of round it out. Now, Jdog, I know we talk about umpiring left, right, and centre. You're sick of talking about the umpiring, and I get that. But how Bailey Dale could be given deliberate out of bounds when he was running through and takes the ball out, yet good old Joshy Dacos can run into the play, do a U-turn, and then run the ball over and not get held accountable for that. Sniff test, mate. Not good enough. So the umpires have to do something there. Yep.
I'll always say this, that I don't think the umpiring should ever be equal in a game. There's no rule saying it should be.
Yep.
But when it is lopsided as that, and the score is one goal between the two teams, that's where I believe that does have an influence. And I think there's been many clips circulating around social media which shows the exact opposite of what Collingwood were getting paid freeze for, versus when Bulldogs would do the exact same thing and getting nothing in return from the umpires. There were holding balls, there were up over the boundary roughness, there were deliberate out of bounds, like you said, where in similar or critical positions on the field, those same incidents were not being rewarded like Collingwood was.
Yeah. And you know what? Isn't it interesting? After 100 years, the Doggies had their biggest ever home and away crowd. Ever.
Yeah. It was 76,000. It was a great game.
It was a great game until I went to bed. And then I woke up the next day and saw the result, and I had to go back and have a look to see what happened. And I thought the Doggies were out of it, but I will say, Sam Darcy, OMG. He is, they throw the unicorn around a little bit. He is immense, that bloke. He's just a massive unit, Jdog. And he clunks them.
Image of his dad.
He is, but he clunks them and kicks straight, which is, for a guy who's 200 centimetres plus, to be able to guide the ball down and is really reliable in front of goal, that is not normal. There's guys who are 6'5", 6'6", who can't even guide the ball down and kick straight. He is just unbelievable. So they've got a future there. I think the Doggies are still going to have some issues. They need to win these early games. They've just got too many injuries, and I don't know whether they're going to be able to catch up in the back half of the year. But stranger things have happened. We'll see what happens. All right. We rolled then into Super Saturday. Jdog, Super Saturday. Did you get a chance to watch any of the games on the weekend, whether it was the Essendon Adelaide game, your game, or the St Kilda Geelong game? Because, it's not on free to air.
No, but thank you. No, I've got KO.
Yep.
But I did do catch up. So I watched the minis, and I just watched the Crows just absolutely storm another massive win. And I saw one of the most disgraceful things I've ever seen on a football field.
What was that?
Sam Draper. Don't go bringing that around here. Don't go bringing that. You're 20 out in front.
Explain it to... Stevie Johnson has a lot to answer for when he first brought this in. Many, many years ago. This is
extreme, though.
This is just stupid.
Is it stupid if it works, though, Peps? That's the thing that always comes on.
No. From that far out, you've got to be kicking a drop punt. I don't know. If you can't kick a drop punt from 20 metres out or 10 metres out and put it through the big sticks, even try to put it through the big sticks, all I'm going to say is that you shouldn't be playing AFL footy. Simple as that. Simple as that. I just don't trust them at all.
But the big story here, obviously, is the fact that Essendon got absolutely decimated by Adelaide Crows, who we both said that this is probably Nixie's last year if something doesn't turn around, and possibly one of the first coaches gone midway through the year.
We did say that.
To the point where this was the highest conceded score of Essendon since 2011. at the MCG.
But so they still kicked 100 points, but they lost 100 and they've lost 161 the other way. They just don't defend, Jdog. Like, Essendon supporters must be just pulling their hair out going, it's the old Malcolm Blight, but the reverse. Oh, it's okay if we kick 100, if they kick 161. How could you not defend at all? There was a stat that was thrown around, I think it was today, that Essendon have been in the top 9 scoring teams, the top 9 scoring teams for a number of years or whatever, but they've only been in the top defensive teams once. Like, how can you just not put any... They're the reverse Melbourne. They are the reverse Melbourne. We can't kick goals, and they can't stop them. Oh, but Adelaide, way too good. Riley Thilthorpe, Jesus, he shouldn't be allowed on a footy field. Like, he needs to be caged up. He is just a man beast.
Thilthorpe, Rochelle, kicked 4 goals himself. Like
Fogarty.
Big boys.
They just, Neil Bullen chipped in for a couple as well. They were just immense. They're going to be hard to stop if they continue. But once again, we're only 3 rounds in. Stranger things have happened. Your mob, tell us about your game against Richmond. You gave them a bit of the reality check, took them to the Bank of Hinkley and got them the reality check that they probably didn't think that they would get. I actually thought they might have been a bit of a chance.
I think last week was last week's result of Richmond winning was well overs. I think people probably expected this Richmond to turn up, and Port Adelaide were lucky enough to get them early enough.
Yep.
And pays way to what we got. Like, I don't think people are expecting much out of Richmond this year, other than the absolute diehard Richmond people. I think we're all probably looking at it going, it's going to be a rebuild year.
Yeah, it's a rebuild year.
And that felt like a rebuild game.
Yep.
There were training drills there. Peps, there were chain handballs where there was no pressure on players. There was no marking, no defensive pressure. And you had guys from Port Adelaide walking it in from 15 metres out.
The black and yellow witches hats were out. That's pretty much how you could go. There was just nothing that you could say about them, unfortunately.
There's no exceptional players, or I'm going to kudos anyone from Port Adelaide, because it was just it was a training drill game.
There has been a question raised about Chris Scott from Leemac. Great to have him online for the first time, I think, this year. But I want to get into that about coaches, because there's something I need to raise with you with coaches and clubs blowing their load on signing them too early.
I love a coach conversation.
We'll love a good coach conversation. Hey, I love a good coach, because this is one of the ones that I was a bit worried about. St Kilda, great win over. Now I'll watch this game. St Kilda over the Cats. From the first bounce, it just looked like St Kilda were more hungry. Like they had this intent about them. And why Geelong it was almost like Geelong didn't look Geelong-wise, and St Kilda looked not St Kilda-wise. Like everything that we're bagged St Kilda for, they weren't doing. They were hard at it, moving the ball nicely, beating to the contest. Their clearance work was sensational. Rowan Marshall was doing his things. Calamity was back in the back line at the forward line this week. Sensational. They actually look like a better forward line without Ben King being in there. Mason Wood contributes. Snags Higgins does his usual kick and four. They just worked really, really well with each other. And it just goes to show, like with Geelong, when they're off a little bit, now no Tom Stewart, potentially for a week or two. They're saying he might get back this week, but I reckon he'd be a week. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens with them this week and then the week after, because are Geelong the type of club that if they do get a couple of, like Bailey Smith wasn't there, there was no... that bloke.
Peps.
I forgot his name already.
Maybe, but the fact that St Kilda almost blew a 40-point lead in the third quarter to run it in less than a goal, like another couple of minutes, I reckon that would have been a different game. I reckon that could have been a Geelong win, and that's concerning. That's really concerning.
Yeah, when they allowed them to kick, they kicked 4 goals each in that, or 4 goals in that third quarter each. So they kept that spread. They got off to a beautiful start, 6-1 in the first quarter. Then they allowed them. So they had that 5 to 6 goal buffer for a majority of the game. Then they just almost went to sleep in that last quarter, which a lot of clubs have been doing, especially early on in the season when the fatigue sets in and they're not match ready. They did let them kick 4 in the last quarter to their 1 and gave them a sniff. But they were just too good. They set the game up early. Like a lot of clubs are setting their season up early with early wins. They were able to do it quite easily in that game as well too. And I'm not too worried about Geelong, but you probably wouldn't want too many teams getting off to a start like that. When you talk about teams who had a fast start, the Weagles, what a start. At one stage, I think it was 34-1 up there at the Jab of the Hut. It was looking good. I'm thinking, how was this? I was even saying to the people I was with on the way to the footy, put a couple of bucks on Brisbane to win this one, because I don't think there was any worry that they wouldn't get back. It just took them a while.
I said 1,000 points.
Pardon?
I said 1,000 points last week.
I think you did. But I think the other thing with that, though, Jdog, is that it was about 32 degrees up there, but almost 100% humidity. And they're talking about the AFL not scheduling games at that particular time frame because of the weather. Either play it at night or you play it when it gets scheduled. Look, what do we do in Melbourne? Oh, it's a bit too cold. Don't play it because it get wet. Or I can't play it because it's rain. It's the conditions of the game. Too bad, too sad. You just deal with it. But they just rose to the top again, didn't they? Brisbane do what they Brisbane do. What were your thoughts on the old Harley Reid giving the Tweety to the crowd?
Good. Bring it on.
Who gives it?
I love it.
Who cares?
I love this. I don't care. In the same way I don't care about last year. Was it last year with the incident with the player giving a high five and whatever?
The player giving the hug, yeah. It's just got out of control. Like, they're more worried about that than the state of the umpiring. And there's been something interesting that's come out of the AFL this evening as well too. So I'm just going to try and get some info. But it's to deal with one of our people that we love so much on this podcast. One of the senior people at the AFL is in a little bit of a bother.
Do you know what? I'm all for players sticking it up supporter groups, and I'm all for supporter groups sticking it up players. I love that. That's the drama of it. That's what footy needs. It needs some characters.
Yep. Do you know where there wasn't really much character shown, Jdog? It was at Marvel Stadium yesterday afternoon, around about from 3:20 onwards. I happened to go there. I took my mate's mother-in-law and his kids, and I went with Nitro. And at quarter time looked all right, half time looked all right. And then I just watched the rising of a club who has been down for so long play football in a way I haven't seen them play in a massive amount of time. And I also saw a club who is down on personnel, but there needs to be some changes made. Lots of changes made. To the point that I did tip Goodwin will be the first coach sacked, and I reckon he will be the first coach sacked. They were putrid. They were putrid. But I have to sit here and say, North Melbourne, where do you want me to start? Tristan Xerri destroyed Max Gawn in the ruck. Luke Davies-Uniacke, I haven't seen this guy play live maybe once or twice at the most. Absolute beast. Zerha had a day out, and he doesn't do that all that often. Bailey Scott was immense. Tom Powell, this is a guy that they picked up a couple of drafts ago that has had ridicule after ridicule, constantly being, is he good enough? He is now coming into his own. Charlie Comden must have rolled in dog shit before he turned up that day. No one went near him. They were way too hard, way too good, way too quick. Their ball movement was slick, and it made Melbourne look like amateur hour. On top of that, Jdog, there's been video that's been shown, I've seen on TikTok or Facebook, where there's a Melbourne supporter going absolutely burko at the Melbourne players. I was standing right next to him when he was doing that, and I had to take a couple of steps back because the players were just eyeballing in our direction. And it was just, I felt it was disgusting. I'm thinking, what would happen if the footballers came into our office and bagged us? Like, that's their workplace. And I know they're getting paid a lot of money, but sometimes it was too far. And I was embarrassed for how this person behaved. And me, I usually give my own rants. But it was disgusting. It was disgusting how and it wasn't everybody. That's just when 100 people lined up, one person courses and gives the Melbourne side of things a bad name. They deserved it because it wasn't a great performance from the coach's box. It wasn't a great performance on the field as well too. Bo Hawkins, a great comment. Darling has freed up the Bull, and he's also freed up PC as well too. Paul Curtis, he's one thing that I'm going to mention about the forward line. And if you were setting up a forward line, I'm going to throw you a question later on. Which way would you go with? Because I've got some stats that back up who I would go with when it comes to forwards. And I think last but not least was the evening game, which was the Fremantle-Sydney game. Talk about it. I keep telling you, Jdog, how come we keep going over it, that the final game on the weekend, the graveyard slot, is almost the spot that you want to play in. It seems to be just great games week after week after week. And the Swans, after their pretty putrid couple of weeks, pinched a win. Joel Amati gets the goal with a minute to go, and the ball goes down to the 304 line, and Mark gets taken, but literally 1 second after the siren goes. A crack of a game. Cox gets his first win. I think there's a little bit of pressure coming from the Fremantle side of things, from definitely the supporter groups over there, that were expecting a better start to the season. The loss in Geelong, now their loss at home against Sydney, 0-2, not what they were hoping. So they've got some ground to make up. It is still early days, but we know that Longmuir is coaching for his career. So yeah, very, very fascinating. Very, very fascinating.
No, I tipped Freo to be in the 8 this year.
Yeah, I picked them to be second, I think.
Yeah, and I don't think they're playing horrible football. I think it's just a couple of pieces that they're missing, or not pieces they're missing. Like that game on Sunday, that could have gone the other way. Joel Marty misses that goal. Joel Marty doesn't make that mark. That 1 second longer, and that game probably flips the other way. I still am holding Freo. I'm not going to write Freo off just yet. I think they're
not writing them off, but you'd expect them to get a bit more synchronicity together as well before things going. Hey, before I get into my my sort of section, which I want to talk about forwards, I mentioned that there was a senior AFL official who is needing some assistance. Well, the AFL has appointed respected executive Jeff Walsh to assist Laura Kane with football operations. Now, according to the agenda setters Caroline Wilson tonight, the former North Melbourne CEO has been working part-time at league headquarters in a consultancy role since 2023, but will step up to deputise Kane in a full-time capacity after the push from clubs to bolster the footy department with more experience.
Hang on, who's deputising who?
So there'll be Laura Kane. Jeff Walsh will be sitting underneath. Jeff Walsh. Practically five days a week.
His role will be to support the 18 football clubs.
No, to basically support Laura Kane. So what is that saying, Jdog? What is that saying about Laura Kane? Is she out of her depth? Is she out of her depth? Let's be honest. Because this is the first time that I can remember that I can look back and say that the football operations manager has had to have somebody come in and deputise them to assist in them doing their role?
Maybe, but I also think that previous managers probably haven't had to deal with the scope of what this role is now. There's a lot to it now, Peps. It's not just a play on the weekends and
no. It hasn't been like that for a long time, Jamie. Look, read between the lines. She's not up to it at the moment. That's what it is. That's
so not to put you on the spot, Peps, but like what has she failed to do at the moment? Is it the umpire? Is it the state of the umpire? Because that's always been
I think the state of the game at the moment is not in a good position. I don't think, regardless of what you look at.
But memberships are up.
Jamie,
attendance is up.
Jamie, people are still going to buy memberships. People are still going to go to the footy. When you've got footballers getting rubbed out for 3 weeks for something that was potentially going to cause them injury, when there's no option between 0 and 3 weeks. This got raised last year with the tribunal. Mm-hmm. It was not actioned. There was nothing done to alleviate the issues in the tribunal and alleviate the massive catechism between 0 or taking something to the tribunal, which was a mandatory 3 weeks. Like, nothing was done there. There's no wiggle room. Mm-hmm. I would also say they talk about the standard of umpiring, the standard of games. The games are going on too long. But the issue with a lot of those games going on too long is at the fault of the AFL themselves, because the umpires wait too long to throw it up. The boundary umpires stand there and look to see where the ruckmen are instead of just throwing it straight in. Every time that occurs, it's 5 to 10 seconds. If you're getting, 6 boundaries throw-ins a quarter, that's a whole minute. It doesn't sound like much, but that's a minute. Then you have these score reviews because the goal umpires aren't willing to make a decision, even though the goals get reviewed at the end of every time it goes through. You've also got rules that I don't know where they've gone. The standard of rules, dropping the ball. I don't know if you saw the Melbourne game yesterday. Henderson tackled, and I think it might have been LDU, right in literally 10 metres out. A perfect tackle. Dropped the ball, wasn't paid. Now, everybody, when the North Melbourne supporters are looking at you going, oh, it's not good. The dropping the ball has still got confusion. Holding the ball still got confusion. Confusion around when is the ball deliberate out of bounds, when it's not deliberate out of bounds. Now, all of these things that have occurred and have not been rectified at all, you've got to start to wonder, well, what's going on? Do you know the one that makes me laugh even more? When a fullback used to kick out a fullback and no one touched the ball that rolled out over the boundary line, that was a free kick. If the guy runs out of fullback now and kicks it and misses everybody and it rolls out, it's just a throw-in. When did that change? Why has that changed? It's these little things that are just people. I don't think are happy.
I don't want to drag this even out too long.
No, we're not.
Like, is that Laura Kane's responsibility, or is that the umpire? Is that the AFL umpires?
Yeah, but who do they report into?
Yeah, but is that Laura Kane's?
That's
she's
the
dropped the ball plumb right in front, whatever.
No, but she would have the umpires. The umpire's manager or whatever reporting to her and giving her feedback and saying, listen, we're seeing things with this. We need to get it worked out. Tribunal, Michael Christian, it's under her umbrella. It is under her umbrella.
I don't know. I just see all this. I just see all that stuff in the game stuff is like, it is a ever moving beast that no one has ever solved. There's no McLaughlin. There's no Dimitri. Like no one has solved it. Because
but Andrew Dillon is there. No, but the reason is that they make changes, but they don't fix anything that's wrong. That's the issue that they have.
you say that's what everyone's done in this role?
I would say a lot of people in this. Well, no, but this is not. And this is not McLaughlin and Demetriou. You got Andrew Dillon above her. Remember, that's their role.
Yeah.
I just think we didn't have we still had challenges under McLaughlin, but at least I think he was more at the forefront. I don't know. It's the first time that somebody's had to come in and assist this person in their role.
I am all for it. If at the end of it,
you're a great fence sitter, Jdog. You are a great fence sitter.
I'm not fence sitting. I promise I'm not. I promise I'm not. I just see that the game now is bigger than what it once was. Cost of living's through the roof. All these things, all these pressures.
Yeah.
So to manage the game, the off the field stuff and the on the field stuff, I think that there are leaders under her that are also failing.
No, I think I think. Listen, when it comes down to it, the product itself, which is the football, there's issues there. You fix that up.
Is the product bad though? I still enjoy football.
Yeah, I love footy. I love going. I love watching. But they make the game too complex than it needs to be. And really? I feel and I'd love to hear what the listeners say, and I'd love to hear what the viewers say. I feel that there's too many chefs in the kitchen when it comes to coaches, when it comes to players, when it comes to umpires, who have their opinion, they get listened to, things get changed and altered, and it's actually making it more confusing. When they should just... I don't know any other sport that has as many rule changes as we do, for the sake of a rule change. No, but it's still it's not. I find it fundamentally frustrating when you don't know what's going to happen. When you should be able to know what's holding the ball, what's not. You should know what's a 15-meter kick, Jdog. I've seen kicks go 25 meters and they're getting caught short. Like it's just these silly things that don't make any sense. Anyway, can we move on?
Beauty of chaos. It's the chaos state.
Yep, it is. Right, Jdog. I'm even going to go big screen for this because this is how I want to roll this one out. I'm going to go to big Peps. Right. Jdog, I would say that the days of the big key power forward being a massive recruiting target to take clubs to the stratosphere are over.
Yeah, I think I've made that decree for the last 4 or 5 years. I agree.
You agree?
There's no argument here.
So
I totally agree.
I would not even draft a key forward anymore. I would not pay a big forward big bucks anymore. And where this has sort of come from is Oscar Allen is a free agent this year. He's commanding a bit of interest from Melbourne, Hawthorn, maybe Geelong, maybe the Western Bulldogs. There's a lot of clubs going around.
A few. Yep.
Now, is he worth it? I don't know. What do you reckon? So if he came to your club, Jdog, what do you reckon he would ask? How much would you have to pay him to get him out of 1.2?
1.3 to 1.5.
All right, so okay, 1.3 to 1.5. All right.
And probably you'd have to give someone like him, what is he, 24, 25?
You'd have to give him 1.5 over 5? Over 6?
You'd have to go more. You'd have to go 7.
1.5. If he gets 9 over 6, 9 million over 6 years, that'd be about right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's for one player. Could you go, as an example, you go for that 1.5 million, you pick up someone like, I don't know, Marlborough Chol, Shannon Neal, and then for the remaining few dollars, you pick up 2 gun small forwards.
Yep.
So instead of putting all the chips into the basket for the big guy, you go for the little ones. Here's why. Because just from some of the results we've seen so far this year in 2025, if you have a look at the top of the goal kicking at the moment, there's a plethora of small forwards leading it. Now, we're only, like I said, 3 games in. So what I went back to 2024. I picked out the clubs that had the highest goal kickers last year. And then I went and picked the top 5 of those clubs. So Lions, Swans, Cats, Hawks, Giants. They're the 5 that I went with. Then what I did was I wanted to find out of their top 5 goal kickers, how many were key forwards. Now, when I say key forward, we're looking at anybody over 190 centimeters, you'd say. So they've got to be a big unit. All right. Compared to the smalls. What was the output from the smalls? All right. So we're starting with the Lions. They had 2 key forwards. Now we're talking about Hipwood and Danaher. 91 goals they kicked. Their 3 small forwards ended up with 111 goals between them. All right. The Swans, they had their 3 keys, which was McLean, Amadi, and McDonald. 118 goals between them. All right. Underneath that, you got Papley and Heaney had 71. Now, if you threw in Chad Warner, you'd have 105 goals. All right. So the smalls are doing just as much as the big guys in that case. The Cats, interesting one here. They had their 2 big key forwards in Neil and Cameron, came out with 87. Their small forwards are sitting underneath there, 108. The Hawks, they had 1 key forward, which was, I went with Marbury Chol, can't pronounce his name. And their 4 smalls, and this is the one that sort of set me off, 121 between them. Mm-hmm. All right. And last but not least, the Giants. Now, they had their 3 big guys down there. 133 goals between them. And that was the outlier. And then you had for their smalls, 63. So I'm looking at it. If you've got $1.6 million to spend, you would not put all your chips into a big key forward, because at the moment, the way the game is being played, they are just not getting the return on investment if you then diversified and had more money spent on the little fellas and maybe going for a bargain in terms of a full forward. So
you're playing Moneyball.
It's not Moneyball. I just think that you're getting more value out of investing into small forwards than you are with a big key forward than you used to. It was always about, you look at Mackay and Curnow. They are the 2 big guys down at Carlton. But if they don't get on the park, which is what everything's been invested into, where are they going to score their goals?
Yeah.
So the Lions, they won the flag last year with a really good spread of on-ballers. Yes, they had Hipwood. Yes, they had Danaher as well. But Danaher's gone now. Morris has gone down there as well too. So Logan Morris, I think, has gone down to the forward line. But they're now able to open it up, and they've got Bailey running through. They've got Rayner going through. They've got Zorko can go down there. Neil can go. They've just got lots of flexibility. Charlie Cameron running down there. So they've got more options in the way that the game is being played with speed. So you're just getting more value for it. So they're more versatile, meaning that these smaller guys can go into so many different areas. They don't have to be just forwards. They can be midfielders. They can move into the wing. They can plug into a back pocket if they need to, if things need to be changed. They can tag. You don't have that freedom and flexibility. The big guys can only play a key position. And if you see it these days, key position is very, very rare. When the ball's up the other end of the ground, the full forward is almost at the center, if not a little bit further forward, and then they're running back. So the days of bombing it long to the guy who's one out is not virtually there anymore, unless you're counteracting on the flip side. The play's a lot quicker at the moment as well too, especially it feels like Marvel, where the deck is so quick. The big guys just get caught out unless they are one out in the forward 50, which a lot of teams don't do anymore. A lot of the forwards that have kicked bags or kicked big scores over the last number of years have actually been traded from one club to the next. So Chol has been traded from one club to the next. You've also got Henry has moved from Magpies to the Cats. You've also got from the Giants, Stringer will make a massive impact. You've also got Jesse Hogan has made a massive impact by changing over as well too. So you don't have to trade for these guys. And they also take many years to come along, and it is pretty much luck of the draw. I could sit here and look at my club. Like, we have struggled to get a decent full forward since probably the David Neitz days. But we've had Lucas Cook, we've had Jacob Van Rooyen, we've had Jefferson, we've had Lucas Kentfield. We did have Jesse Hogan, and he went back. But the whole point I'm saying is that they take longer to develop, and it's a lot more hit and miss than you will with a small forward. Because if a small forward doesn't flourish, he might be able to move to a wing. He might be able to move to a back pocket. He might be able to move to a tagger like James Jordan has done. Can't do that with a big guy. And so I'm just sitting back and going, if I was setting up a team for the future, I would pretty much try and look around the leagues and go, okay, who could I pick out? Because I just need them to make a contest. And then invest in, a Watson or a Toby Green, a Charlie Cameron, a Brett Daniels, a Cozzy Pickett. I'd invest in those smaller whippet types who can cause the chaos, burn their opponents off, and get to the right place a lot better than relying on the big guys to hit the big bags. Because it just doesn't happen anymore. Now, Jules Julio has said, what about Ben Brown? Well, we didn't actually draft him. We traded for him. So there's a perfect example of we found a need and we got him in, we win a flag. So I think you draft a lot of the midfielders, and then you need to maybe plug for your need. And Hawthorn have done that brilliantly under Clarkson, and they're going to do the same again under Mitchell as well too. What do you reckon?
It works. It works well. I agree to some extent. It works well when you've got those dynamic pockets or small forwards. The problem comes with what you're saying is the issue where you might have two really good key defenders, and so one will put body on the tall defender and then leave the second up for a free mark.
Yep.
So if the ball doesn't hit the ground, then you're in a lot of trouble. And I mean, Peps, our two teams have had these issues where the ball will come in and you're just thinking, why are you kicking this ball in the air? Because their second or third floating halfback is just going to come in from the side and mark this, and it does.
Yep.
So I love what you're saying, and I totally agree with you. I think the days of spending big money or investing big draft stocks into a key position forward are over. I think contested possession is important. And to your point, having those forward players there, but you need a structure to support that type of football. And you need your centers, halfbacks, and forwards to also buy in that the big long ball in, the big 55-meter launch into the forward 50.
Yep.
This is not our game. We're looking for short 25, 30, 40-meter passes.
And the way that forward lines are getting absolutely chock-a-block with defenders, like there's 18 defenders almost in the back 50 these days. You're better off going the mongrel ball along the ground than bombing it into the air and letting the tall backman. So from a tall backman perspective, I think they're massively valuable. You need to have the tall backs because clubs, if in doubt, will bomb it in, and you're able to either knock it out, punch it out, spoil, or even take the mark. Down the forward, it's a lot harder for them to be able to clunk it. And so I still think you need the big boys down back. But you know what? Clubs don't think outside the square, and they still bomb along. I would rather them butcher it into the 50, have the ball along the ground, and get the little boys just running in there, devastating the backmen, especially if they're on a taller side of things, and try something a little bit different. Use their pace to their advantage. Something has to change. And yeah, I just think that, great comment here. When Buddy left the Hawks, they got the three-peat. Why? Was that a coincidence? Because you become so Buddy focused. As soon as he left, they were able to spread the load a bit better as well too. And I think that's what happening with Carlton at the moment. It's definitely happening with a couple of teams that when they're becoming too full forward focused on one person, as soon as you shut them down, they're not bringing in they're bringing in their the superlatives around. But Hawthorn are doing it really nicely. Adelaide are doing it really nicely. Brisbane are doing it really nicely at the moment. Geelong did it really nicely when they won the flag a couple of years ago, and also last year as well too, where they did rely on Hawkins and Cameron, but they did have Myers, they did have Neal, they did have Close, they did have Stengel at the feet as well too. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about drafting a key forward anymore because it's too hit and miss.
And just on that, Peps, like Adelaide are in a position where they've got your Fogartys, your Rochelle's, the other big
Rankin,
one.
yep.
And then you've got likes of like Rankin and those sort of guys at the feet. Like Rankin's a freak. So they're in the position like almost like the opposite to what you're saying, Peps, because they've got those 3 targets up there, those big tall targets up there. If one gets bodied out, they've got a second or third option to take that big mark.
Yeah, so in that case, it probably does work, but I'm looking at the now. But how long has it taken for Thilthorpe to get where he is?
God,
This how long has it taken Fogarty to finally do it? We're talking 6 years into his. 6 years into his. Thilthorpe would be about his 4th or 5th year.
And almost a Nixie gone out of the door.
Yeah.
Almost a lost
so
coach.
It's almost to the point where the coach has been pushed out the door that these guys are now starting to fire. So it's a real risk for coaches. And it's also a real risk to take these guys on because a lot of these big forwards are on big, long contracts. If they go down with a knee, or in Carlton's case, no Mackay, Curnow isn't playing at the moment. You're paying a lot of money. Jamari Ugle-Hagan, you're paying a lot of money to these, Showtime guys, but they're just not getting on the park. It's not good enough. It's definitely not good enough. Nah. Rightio. Big man, before we wrap up, we're heading into officially round 3 of the season this year. And so I just wanted to go through a few key stats or a couple of key points looking at this round of football in something that I would like to call this round over the years. So let me just give you a couple of key facts about round 3 over the years. Did you know between 1971 and 1992, Hawthorn had an impressive round 3 record, securing 19 wins and only 3 losses. The record high scoring round was in 1985. In round 3 of the 1985 season, the average team score reached 134.8 points, the highest in VFL AFL history. And interestingly enough, Carlton defeated North Melbourne with a score of 31-25, 211 to 14-14, 98. So there was 45 goals kicked just in that game. South Melbourne, in round 3, officially made the transition from South Melbourne to the Sydney Swans. Interesting. And Geelong's record-breaking winning streak set a record winning streak which has not been broken of 23 games up until this particular point. And in round 3 of 2019, Hawthorn fielded the equal oldest team in 123 years with an average player age of 28.21 years of age. And last but not least, Bob Pratt holds the record for the most goals kicked by a player in round 3 with his 15-goal performance in 1934. So there's some facts and figures for the round 3 over the VFL AFL history in this round over the years.
Love it.
You love it?
15 goals.
And I'll have that every single week as well too. Rightio. Ladies and gentlemen, that's at the end of a massive episode. For everybody who's been online, thank you very much for joining us. I think everybody who loved it last week. Great to have the people on the chat as well too. Awesome. Quick question for you, Jdog. I've just seen this come through on the chat and I was supposed to raise it and I didn't. Brad Scott got another 2 years from Essendon.
Yes.
Why?
The only thing that I'm thinking of is club stability.
Has it actually made it more stable or is it destabilized? Because he hasn't actually made them any better. Luke Beveridge looks like he's in his last year.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Simon Goodwin, I think he's in the last year of his contract this year. Even might be 2026. I have to double check that. You can't sign these people on to stabilize the club. I don't know why clubs are so balls to the wall to re-sign coaches through the year. It does not make sense to me. What is the purpose of it? They're under a contract. They're not going anywhere. You perform, you stay. If you don't perform, you go. That's what happens with players. So why are clubs so adamant in re-signing these coaches who are not getting the runs on the board. Up until the weekend, I would have thrown in Ross Lyon. I'd say Justin Longmuir in Fremantle has got challenges in front of him as well too. Even though he's not coaching well, do you still sign him up just to stabilise the club? Because I think it actually does the opposite. Because clubs want to see improvement. Members want to see improvement. Supporters want to see improvement. And if you keep somebody on who's not doing that, wouldn't it have the opposite effect?
I think context here is a big one for the fact that Essendon obviously feel like that they were probably close to winning a final this year. They felt in the off field in the boardroom they were close to winning a final or getting into a final and winning one. The context here is they sign up Brad Scott. He wins the first 2 games of the season. No one's talking about this. But now he's lost 2 games in a row. Everyone's talking about it. And yet if they signed him up, I don't know, later on in the year, people are going, why aren't we giving this guy a contract? That becomes the noise. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I think it was just trying to create some stability for the next couple of years.
Yep. No, fair enough. No, it just came up in the question from Lee Mack, and I'm going to address it a bit earlier, and I just came back to it. But it just startles me that for whatever reason, there's this passion to re-sign coaches for another year or two when the runs haven't been really on the board. And I don't understand why they're doing it, especially now where it is such a tight competition and there's lots of good coaches who are out there. Why would you rush into it?
I'm with you because Port Adelaide is the
you're doing the perfect example right now.
And the kettle in this story. Port have done it 3 times in a row. Signed up Kenny when there was nothing to prove, or we said we're going to wait to the end of season before we make decisions, and we go early. We've done it 3 or 4 times, so I'm totally with the Essendon supporters here. I think it's frustrating, but that's probably the reason why they're doing it.
I think it's a very valid point. I think clubs need to be a little bit more brutal in the way I say, hey, you perform, you get it. If you don't, I know it tries to put everyone at rest, but there could be decisions being made over the next 10 weeks that might actually put clubs completely backwards as well too. But I just want to think we'll keep our minds on that. That's something that we'll have a look over the next few weeks as well too. Hey, everybody who joined us, thank you very much. Cracking episode, big fella. Love what you've brought to the party. Thank you everybody who's tuned in online. Great to see you in the chat. And everybody who's joined us online via our podcast as well too. The original number 1 non-club affiliated podcast this side of the Westgate Bridge, dominating the charts as well too. Thank you very much for joining us as well too. So I'm Chris Pepper. And I'm with the great man, Jamie Jdog Wallace. There is our round 2 review. That was a massive week of football. Heading into this week, there is a few games that let's have a chat about, Jdog. Essendon Port Adelaide Thursday night. Are you a bit worried about that one? You should win that. You think you should win that, shouldn't you?
Should we? Yep, we should.
Yep. Carlton Western Bulldogs will be a cracker. Whoever loses, I would say... If Carlton lose, their season's pretty much over. Melbourne Gold Coast. Now, I'll be going to that game. I can't wait. Will Melbourne lose to Gold Coast at the MCG? I'm tipping we probably will. St Kilda versus Richmond. This is, I reckon, is the game of the weekend. Down at Utah Saints. Hawthorn versus GWS. Saturday, March 29. That'll be on Channel... Oh, no, it won't. It'll be on KO or Foxtel, 7:35. Brisbane Geelong. That'll be a cracking game. That was the one that was supposed to have a couple of weeks ago. They've brought that one forward. West Coast versus Fremantle. They've got the derby. And then you got a number of teams such as Collingwood and Sydney are having the bye as well too. So,
and that should align our season out.
No, it won't, because you'll still have the Essendon Gold Coast game will be played at the end of the year. Yes.
Shit.
Yes. Instead of just playing it or giving them 2 points each. I don't know. So, Big Dog, that's it. How do you want your footy, big man?
I want it laced out.
I want it laced out. I reckon the porters and the listeners and the viewers, they want it too. And all we can say is hope your team wins, and we'll see you this time next week.
See everyone.
And my tips will be out in a couple of days.